From a young age, my daughter grew up recycling, putting cardboard aside, separating the plastics from the trash, taking the organic waste from the kitchen, putting it in the compost, running it down the pathway with me. She painted colorful signs and banners when we all marched down Baker Street to City Hall. Some of you were there in support of the Paris Climate Agreement. When she turned 16, she learned to drive and got her license in a Prius hybrid. All good stuff, right? As an adult, she drugged me along to paint green handprints all over the MLA's office front window. Washable, of course. She decided she was going to do environmental studies and was accepted to university to do just that. Then she gave up. Like so many people who've poured their hearts and souls into trying to make a difference in the world, to impact climate change locally and more broadly, she ran out of gas with that and gave up. What difference does it make anyway, she said, after she'd been up to Ferry Creek on our pristine Pacific coast, joining the blockades, risking getting arrested, and still no real governmental change, no real action other than a wink and a nod from the big companies. She vowed at that point that she was never going to have children of her own, which is not an uncommon decision these days among youth. Cecilia referenced a Lancet study that showed that 83% of 10,000 young adults across 10 countries in 5 continents feel that their climate future is very unlikely and they don't have much hope for that. 75% of the same group feel that we as human beings are not doing nearly enough to protect our planet, and as Donna reminded us, our cousins. Half of people in this age category around the world are skeptical about bringing their own kids into a burning, heating, warming planet. So, what can we do? Well, as a clinical psychologist, I've spent my career trying to help people manage anxiety, to move through really disastrous, challenging, heart-rending personal circumstances, moving through areas of grieving. And in the area of clinical psychology, we have some really good strategies and effective treatments that science has shown to help us with things like anxiety and depression. What we do to help ourselves and our neighbors and our kids and our elders through climate anxiety, this research is still just barely in its infancy. But we do know a few things already to get us started. What can we do? Well, first, it's important to acknowledge and access our emotions. When we suppress our anger, when we minimize our feelings of hopelessness, when we pretend we don't feel guilty or we don't feel frustrated, we tend to end up doing nothing. But if we access those emotions, if we're willing to talk about them with people around us, if we're willing to let them kind of flow over us, as challenging and at times upsetting as it can be, it can stimulate us to action. Emotion drives behavior. Behavior drives change. Let me give you an example. When we access our emotions and share those with others, we can make a difference. I started talking to my own parents who aren't very knowledgeable about climate change, and they're from a generation that, they were so busy working they didn't pay attention to it. And I started sharing my own climate anxiety and that of my daughter. And when their granddaughter is anxious about the world she's growing up in, they started to sit up and pay attention. They accepted my invites to local talks and rallies, some here at the Mirror Center, like Naomi Klein, and educated themselves on the impacts of climate change. I let them drive the Prius that Kaylee had gotten her license in, and I thought, oh, this is pretty quiet. My dad liked the fact that maintenance was really low and cheap. And they recently just traded in their gas-guzzling SUV for a hybrid of their own. So accessing our emotions, letting ourselves feel them. Second, we need to recharge. And it turns out that hydro, solar, and wind are not only good for the environment, they're good for recharging our own batteries. Some of you know I'm a sailor, so that makes sense now, right? But when we hike up into the fall larches that are turning yellow to get to those lakes, we start to feel it in our very being that this is a beauty that must be sustained. You know, when I'm out there on Kootenai Lake or the Pacific Ocean sailing across these white-capped waters, I'm so connected with the beauty of the place that I feel like I have to do everything I can to make sure this beauty stays this way. When we recharge our batteries in nature, the science is clear. If we're in green spaces, especially if it's by water, it's good for our mental health. This is doubly important for those of us who care about the environment, who are climate activists, who may have gotten burned out and run down. Because not only does it bring our emotions up and increase our physical and mental health, but it connects us to the reasons why we're doing these things in the first place. The third thing is engaging. When we can take action, even though it's hard sometimes or even though we've gotten burned out, it helps ameliorate the difficulties with that burnout and gets us moving again, right? So if we're sharing, our strategies, and lots have been talked about tonight, from the political to the personal to the transportation to the governmental, that will help us overcome this tendency to burnout. Well, after a couple years of sort of recharging her batteries, my daughter made the decision to go back to school as one pathway on her journey to help make the world a better place. And though she's still dead set against having kids of her own, 2 months ago she became an auntie. And she's damn well going to make sure that she's going to do everything she can to leave the world a better place for her brand new niece, my brand new granddaughter. Thank you.